This is Raul Lopez, and you're listening to How Do You Say Success in Spanglish? The path to success isn't easy. For minorities and people of color, many attempt this journey with little to no guidance. Join me as I sit down with individuals who share their stories of perseverance so that together we can learn how to say success in Spanglish. What's good, mi gente? Welcome back to How Do You Say Success in Spanglish. This is Raul. My very special guest today is Omar Cabrera. Hey, Omar, how's it going?
Hey, Raul, man, happy to be here. It's an honor to be in Spanglish, and it's great to be here with you, being one of your first guests. Thank you for having me, man.
No, I appreciate it, Omar. Omar and I go way back for a while now, since like my freshman year of college. And he's always been a great guy. So just kind of talk a little bit about your background. Omar Cabrera is an ethnic media relations manager for the Massachusetts Department of Public Health and sports reporter for a variety of different things. And it's funny because my biggest memory of you is you were one of the only time I ever seen my grandfather get starstruck when he met you, because he used to be the sports reporter for Univision back in the day. And he used to watch you every day. And you came to my graduation party and he was like, oh my God, that's Omar Cabrera. I see him on the news every day. So I just remember every time I'd leave to Boston, he's like, hey, tell Omar I said hi. I was like, I'll go there. So
I always remember that story, man. I actually share that story with a lot of people I know, and I really appreciate that. So
yeah, dude,
thank you for bringing that up.
It's just I mean, fun. Like I said, my whole life, my grandfather, and it's just funny seeing that. But so tell me a little bit about what you currently do. What is a ethnic media relations manager?
So Raul, ethnic media relations manager is what I do. I deal with the media. I deal with all the media, anything health related here in the state of Massachusetts. We deal with the media. So nowadays, I'm actually dealing with all types of media, including English media. But when I first started, I was just the ethnic media person, which means I was dealing with, Spanish-speaking media, Portuguese, anything, any language that was not English. I was, the one in charge of working with them directly. But for the last few years, I got promoted, which is great. So now I deal with English-speaking media as well. So on top of doing what I was doing before, just dealing with ethnic media, now I'm also, I also work directly with English-speaking media, which means a lot more work because, as you know, there's a lot more TV stations, newspapers, websites, radio station, anything, you name it. We deal with anything media related in Massachusetts. And one thing I can tell you, man, I never worked so much in my life as the last 3 years since COVID started, man. That we went from like 0 to 100 in those first few days. So it's been crazy, but it's been a great experience because, now anything health related in the state of Massachusetts, I feel like I know a little bit, at least a little bit of it.
Yeah, and it's funny because definitely I think the last few years, especially with COVID, everybody's become a lot more health conscious and understanding and listening to what's going on. It's all affected us, and we're all a little bit more knowledgeable, and that information is important. And on top of that, you also still do sports reporting. So what kind of things are you doing now?
Correct. So, Raul, before I actually switched my career more into like media relations. I was a sports reporter full-time, sportscaster full-time. I started my career with Univision while I was still at BU. That's where I did my internship. For those people who don't know, Univision, one of the biggest Spanish TV networks in the country. Then after a few years, I moved on to Telemundo, the competition. So I used to do just sports, sports, anything sports. That was me, I cover all the local teams, whether it was the Boston Celtics, Red Sox, Patriots, Bruins, and New England Revolution. So that was like, I would say like the first half of my career for the first 15 years or so. That's what I did. And then, I turned into doing media relations. But, sports is my passion. So I've been lucky and blessed that even though I'm doing media relations, I still get to do a lot of sports because I'm still working for a radio station, TV stations, radio. I also do the play-by-play for the New England Patriots. So you would say I'm more of a freelancer. So when they need me, I go and I try to work on whatever project they have for me. Just last week, I was doing the PA announcing for the New England Revolution, so that was great too because I was doing it in Spanish. So for those people who don't know, the PA announcing is like whatever you hear in the stadium that's going on at Gillette Stadium. That was me, my voice announcing the players, the lineups, and all that stuff. So that's what I do nowadays.
Nice. That's awesome, man. And I'm glad you're able to still continue to do the sports stuff that you like, despite transitioning into media relations as well. And it's funny because the way you work, you have that work ethic, and I think for a lot of us, that's a very it's an immigrant work ethic. If you're not working hard, you don't feel like you're accomplishing what you need to do. And I know you were born in El Salvador, and you came to this country and started off. So tell me a little about how coming from El Salvador.
Correct. Yeah. I came from El Salvador at the young age of 8 years old. I was lucky and blessed that I came with my entire family. I'm the youngest of three brothers, so we were able to come to Boston with my parents and my two brothers. I didn't speak English. One thing I always remember, I hated the cold. I was not used to this cold weather. I remember my mom walking me to the bus stop, and she always brings this up. Like I used to cry walking to the bus stop because it was so cold that I used to be like, I want to go back to El Salvador, right?
Yep.
Especially because I didn't speak English either. So the first few years were tough. But I would say I've been lucky and blessed because I have two really great role models beside my parents, of course, who, like you said, they they bring that hard working mentality to you since you're a little kid. Immigrants, I believe you feel the same way because we come from that background. So I was lucky that besides my parents, I also have my two brothers who were like amazing. They were like superstars when it came to academics. They were both valedictorians. Just to let you know, one of them went to MIT. He could have gone to Harvard, but decided to go to MIT instead. The other one went to Tufts University. They both had great careers. So I felt like, you know what? I have no other option, no other choice but to, follow in the footsteps because I have no other choice. I definitely couldn't have gone left or right. I have to keep going straight because I have to follow in the footsteps that my brother, set up for me when I was a young kid.
So I mean, it's amazing when you have family and parents that are immigrants, and their one dream is I'm sacrificing everything so that my kids will have a better life, and to come in here and kind of, you know, bat 1,000 so far. You just be able to get every kid to go to a good school and graduate and get to be, successful. It's a dream come true for parents. I'm sure they've been very proud of all you guys' accomplishments and stuff like that.
It's great that you mentioned that because this is a story that always stuck in my head. I just remember my parents, they really didn't want to come here. They came here because of us to give us a better life. Actually, my dad had lived here in Boston before I was even born, and he didn't like it, for many reasons the language, the culture, the cold weather. He never liked that. And it's funny because I used to make fun of him. He said that when he went back, he said, I will never go back to the United States. I will never go back to Boston. And I used to be like, Dad, you see, that's why you can never say never. You came back 8 years later. But he always used to tell us, look, we sacrifice everything for you guys. The only thing that we expect in return is for you guys to educate yourself, take advantage of all the opportunities, go to college, get a career, choose whatever you want to do, but that's the way you feel like, you guys can pay us back. And that always stuck in my head because I say, you know what? Man, I have no other choice but to really go to college, take advantage of all the opportunities because my parents sacrificed a lot. And this is the way for us to kind of pay back everything that they did or left behind just for us.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with my dad and my parents. Their focus was education. One of the stories, that's when my dad's a truck driver, and we went to his lot where they have all the trucks where his job was at, and we were meeting all the guys, and they were like, "Oh, are you going to show him how to drive a truck?" And my dad got so upset. He's like, "No, he's never going to learn not to drive a truck." And I'm like, "I think that would be cool." He's like, "No, I don't even want you to even think of liking this job because this job isn't for you. They sacrificed all this." For that. And so it was great for you and us. I mean, both of us. Eventually, we made it to Boston University, and you went to Boston University and you studied. What did you study at Boston University?
Like journalism.
Yeah, and so and so how was that going into school? Especially being an immigrant, language barrier. You came, I mean, older than I did. I was 3 when I came to this country, so I'm sure there was much more of a language barrier that you had to overcome moving early on. So how did college treat you so far?
Yeah, it really was. I mean, when I went to BU, I knew I wanted to do something in communications because, as you know, you probably this. I'm a people's people, right? I like to always communicate. I like to get along with a lot of people. So I always knew I wanted to do something communications related. At that point, when I went to BU, I still wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do. That's why I tried different classes. I did PR, I did marketing, I did journalism because I wanted to see what fit better, what was the best fit for me. And then, after taking some journalism courses, that's when I realized, this is more for me. And I always said, it'll be easier for me to make this transition from journalism to PR if I ever want to do that in the future than from PR to journalism. I thought it would be a little harder. And that's the way it's worked out. It's funny. It's funny how life works because that's exactly what I've done.
Yeah.
I started with journalism and now I'm doing PR as well. So I always knew that I wanted to do something with communication. But I'll tell you one thing, it was tough because even though I did well in high school, not as well as my brothers did, of course, but I did well. I went to a really good public high school in Boston called Boston Latin Academy. And like, for people that don't know, it's an exam school. Like you can only get in if you pass an exam, right? Uh, and to be honest, I don't even know how I made it because I had only been in this country for 3 years.
Yeah.
So I was still learning English, when I
Yeah.
took the test, I was still learning English. And then I passed. And I said, what did I get myself into? Because I'm still learning English and I got to learn how to speak Latin too, because
Mhm.
that's one of the requirements when you go to Latin Academy. You also got to learn how to speak Latin. So I was nervous, I was scared, and I was like, "What? Why did I take that test? I should have not done that." But it was probably the best decision because it prepared me when I went to Boston University. I was there for 6 years, from seventh grade until senior year when I graduated, and then I went to BU, and it definitely helped me. But even when I got to BU, I felt like, even though I thought I was prepared, not 100%, because you probably remember this. You see a lot of kids who come from maybe better school systems that are probably more prepared than we are, right? We
I,
think we
I,
are,
I never heard
but
of a
we're really
blue.
not.
I never heard of a blue ribbon school till I got to college. I'm like, what do you mean blue ribbon? My school lost its accreditation. Right here on my shirt, Shea High School, it lost its accreditation the year after I graduated. So, the question of did I get the necessary learning? Like, am I technically accredited? I mean, yeah, we lost it, and technically I was accredited, but I was like, that's when I started questioning, my education. So yeah, I understand that struggle all the way. So,
So yeah,
so
that's why it was. It was tough, but you know, I think it just makes you work harder. You probably feel the same way. I feel the same way. Just knowing that there are kids who come to college way more prepared than you, but that's where your work ethic comes into play again, right? Like you try to work as hard as a lot of these kids because you say, you know what, it took me a while to make it to this place. Now the best I can do is give my 100% and try to be as successful as I can. And exactly that's what I think that helped us a lot when we were in college.
And you mentioned that while you were in school, you did internship with Univision, and that kind of transitioned you into your journalism. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So my junior year, in at BU, I had a friend who was already working at Univision, and she was one of my classmates. And I say, listen, I need an internship because that was a requirement for us to graduate, right? For us to graduate, I needed to do an internship for credit. So the summer of my junior year, um, she said, Omar, the guy who does sports at Univision, he needs help. He said you can do an internship with him and you send him your resume. So I remember putting my resume together. That was probably the first time I ever made a resume because I had no experience doing a resume, right? This is only junior year in college, and that was also probably another one of the best moments of my life that kind of changed my world, my life, because when I got to Univision, I realized the guy who was doing sports was also from El Salvador. He was a Salvadorian native, right? And somehow we just clicked. Somehow we just clicked. We became really good friends. He saw me as a little brother. He took me under his wing, and he helped me a lot to to the point where, like, you know what, I could have been done with my internship after junior year, but I liked it so much that I kept going, even though I didn't have to anymore. I already had my credits and stuff. Senior year came along, I graduated BU, and I was still going because I didn't have a job. And
Yeah.
so I was already doing it for like a year and a half, the internship, I remember. But you know what? That paid off too because then he saw my interest, my, just how bad I wanted it that he said, hey, listen, I'm going to ask the GM if he can at least give you a part time job. And I was like, man, that would be great. I mean, I'm still coming in for free. Why not even a part time job?
Yeah.
So so that's so he was able to get me a part time job. I did that probably for like after graduation for 6 months. And then after those 6 months, he turned it into a full time job. So, sometimes it's about not just being at the right place at the right time, but also showing people, that when you really want something, you're willing to put all your heart and effort into it. And I feel like that's exactly what I did because I didn't have to, I just kept doing it because I really love it. And I say, hey, even if I'm not getting paid, at least I'm getting experience and I'm learning, that helped me a lot.
And what are some of the barriers to get into journalism?
It's a really tough field, really competitive because as in the journalism business, there's not that many positions, especially on TV, right? Like that's probably why you see a lot of broadcasters, they stay at their jobs for many years because
Hmm.
there's not that many positions. So if you have a great one, why move on? Why leave it? Right. So that's probably I would say, one of the big barriers, one of the tough parts about this business. A lot of competition and not that many jobs available. So, and it's also a tough field because a lot of people don't realize, like, sometimes, like, when you're dealing with like a lot of athletes, it's not easy. It's not easy, different personalities. Some personalities are prima donnas. There's also a lot of really nice guys, nice people out there, but it also deal with a lot of like prima donnas attitudes out there. And that's also one of the tough parts sometimes to deal with. But you kind of like, with experience, you kind of learn how to ignore it and you just go with the flow.
And so, English is your second language. So obviously, Spanish was the first one, and you talked about that language barrier being some issues for you early on. And even as we grow up, so we still have our accent. Has that ever kind of affected? Because there's so many stations, there's so many channels that are sports related, and they're all English, and they're all very good. And having an accent or anything like that, has that had some sort of effect on trying to get into different positions within journalism?
That's a really great question because I was one of that was like nervous about my accent all the time because I, like you said, we know we have it, right? It's not our first language, so we know we have it. But I used to be worried about. I said, why am I gonna go to some audition or some like you know job interview when I know they're probably not gonna hire me because of my accent, right? So for a long time, that kind of kept me away from applying to like English stations, right? English speaking stations or even newspapers because I was worried about that. But it's just crazy and it's funny how things change, right? Fast forward 10, 15 years later, now you see that a lot of people on TV, they have accents, right?
Yeah.
And people
Hmm.
actually kind of like that. It's
Yeah.
just because the world we're living in, right? So now it's so much different. But if you had asked me that 10 years, 15 years ago, I would have definitely told you, you know what? I'm probably not applying for that job available because I don't think they're gonna hire me because of my accent. So by now I feel like if there's a position available and I know I have the experience, I don't care about my accent anymore because I feel like it's more about the experience, it's about the knowledge. And I think the accent, there might still be places where it might keep you away from people hiring you because of that, but it's not as bad as it was maybe 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah. And I think it's funny how you mentioned, I think with time, one of the things that's hard for us to realize is that we're putting in the work and our experience will eventually outshine, everything else. And we no longer rely on our education, we rely on our experience. And that opens the doors because our experience becomes kind of what you need. And how were you able to use your experience to transition into some of these other roles, like announcing at the station, sorry, at the sporting events, for the Patriots, for the Revs. I was going to say Dynamo because I'm used to Houston, but for the Revolution and the Red Sox.
Yeah, experience, and that's like probably the main thing. But as you know, networking is also probably one of the most important things in most fields. I would definitely say, especially in this field, because sometimes it's about people, people who will recommend you to do certain ththings. You know, people who from word of mouth, they like, hey, listen, this person's really professional. He knows what he's doing. Hey, let's give him a chance because that's how I've been able to get different opportunities that I never thought I would, and it'll start somewhere, right? So, I started doing the TV thing, but I never did any play by play before. So, a few years ago, Telemundo asked me, hey, will you be willing to do the color commentating for the Revolution games in Spanish? I'd never done soccer before. I mean, I know my soccer. I love soccer. I reported on soccer, but it's different when you report, doing a stand up, talking about a game than when you're doing a live game,
Yeah.
for 2.5 or 45 minutes. But you also got to believe in yourself. You got to believe in yourself, and your experience and your knowledge. And you know that you're going to have some mistakes here and there, especially at the beginning. But with experience, that fear goes away. Those those errors, mistakes become less. And that's exactly what happened. Like the first season, I was nervous. I used to try to prepare as much as I could, taking down notes, making sure I went over the last names, all the players' last names. So when game time came, I knew how to pronounce their last names. So there's a lot of preparation. And that's what, if you take it seriously and if you like prepare as much as you can and you are really professional, it's going to take you a long way. And I think that helped me a lot. So the Revolution was the first thing I did, and so after the first season, I felt more comfortable. Second, third, fourth, I believe we did it for like 5 seasons, and then by then I was like super comfortable to the point where like before I used to get to the stadium maybe like 6 hours before. By the fifth season, I was probably getting there like 2 or 3 hours before. But I still like to get there early because I like to always prepare. I
Mhm.
like to always prepare. So that, so I did that. And then when people at the Rexes knew that I was doing soccer too, they would be like, "Hey, will you be interested in subbing in for our play-by-play guy, or at least help him color commentate because he needs help?" And I was like, "I never done baseball, but you know what? If I did soccer and I started somewhere, right, I can do baseball too because I know my baseball is just different when you're gonna do a live game.
Mhm.
Same thing. So I did the Red Sox game, right? And then a few years ago, the last opportunity I got was the Patriots. Hey, a friend of mine's, a colleague, called me. He said, "Hey, look, we're looking for a play-by-play guy for the Patriots. Are you interested?" And I was honest. I said, "Hey, listen, I never done football. I done soccer, I done baseball, but I never done football. But I'm willing to give it a shot." He said, "Hey, are you willing to come in for a trial?" I was like, "Yeah." I was nervous, man. I tell you, I was nervous because I never done football. It's different when you're watching it on TV than when you're doing play-by-play, right? But you know what? After the first half, we were doing the first game. They were like, "Hey, it's yours." I was like, "Hey, listen, man, you just got to be confident, in your skills and your experience and your knowledge, and that will take you a long way. But you can't help being nervous too, though."
Yeah, and it's funny the way you mentioned it because for just for this podcast, I've done a couple interviews and I'm just doing some intros and writing stuff, and you're listening to yourself and you're like, oh my god, I sound so horrible, or you're catching yourself and oh my god, I stuttered so much. Oh, I need to learn to slow down and speak a little bit, and that's all stuff you gain with time. Your first one, and I bet you if you listen to your first broadcast and if your first thing, you're gonna be like, "Oh my god, that I sound so horrible. Why did I say
I
that word?"
hate watching my first videos, my first VHS tapes,
Yeah.
because actually, you want to hear a funny story that you mentioned that. Uh, for people that don't know, I was in a fraternity. I was in a fraternity when we were in college, and I remember some of the fraternity guys. And I used to do the way I started at university. I used to do a sports show, half-hour sports show. It's called Football y Más, Soccer and More. Um, and it's a half-hour show, mostly on soccer, but then we cover all the local teams, right? And I remember that frat guys used to get together at the frat house just to watch my show.
Yeah.
And then they told me one day that they will time me because I used to get so nervous and I wouldn't blink. And they said one day they timed me and they timed 7 minutes until I finally blink and they'll start clapping because they were like happy that I finally blinked. And so if I go back to those tapes, I'm like, oh man, what was I doing?
Yeah.
So it's crazy though, but with experience, everything changes. But at the beginning, you're like, oh man, what
And
was I doing?
it and I think that's a big thing. I mean, in all fields, whatever career you go into, the first part of it is always going to be rough. I think for a lot of us, we'll also deal with imposter syndrome, coming in and thinking I don't belong here. Have you
Sure.
ever had to deal with anything like that?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. That happened to me because I was lucky and blessed. Again, being at the right place at the right time. So that guy that I told you, he became my mentor when I first started my internship at Univision. He was from El Salvador. That was kind of like one of the reasons we clicked. But we also kind of close in age. He's a little older than me, but we were still close in age, and we got along really well. So after the first year that I graduated college, and I was still helping him, he got a great job, a great opportunity to move on to another station. And he goes to the GM and tells him, he said, the GM of the TV station, he said, "Hey, listen, I know Omar doesn't have much experience, but I know if you give him, if you're patient, you give him some time, he'll do great." So he was actually recommending me for his job to be the anchor, the sportscaster, the reporter, the producer for the whole show. So they came up to me. So think about it. This is only a year or two after graduating college. I probably was 23 years old at the most. I'm still really young. So the GM comes and he's like, "Hey, do you want it? If you want it, that's your position. You're not going to say no to an
Yeah.
opportunity like that,
Hmm.
right?" But you have your doubts because, like, do I really belong here? I don't have much experience, especially at the beginning. You make a lot of mistakes, right? Make a lot of mistakes. I used to always doubt myself at the beginning because I'm like, man, I'm making a lot of mistakes. Sometimes for me to memorize something like takes me a while, or sometimes like even my writing, I didn't feel like it was good enough. So all those things, it kind of messes with your head, and you start doubting yourself. But then once you get older, you realize that it's all because of experience. Like I'm pretty sure everybody starts the same way. Nobody starts a job feeling like they know everything.
Yeah, and it's always a big thing. I think that I've noticed with other people too, as we talk, that that new job, that first start of it, you're always feeling a little bit not sure, unsure of what you did. Did I make the right move? But if you don't overcome that, you can't succeed because you won't be
Yeah,
able to. take that risk jumping is what you really need to be able to get through to you have to be able to say, I'm going to, like our parents, sacrifice everything in hopes that something better will come, and so it's different now compared to where it was 10 years ago. How has social media affected things? Because now everybody, even assholes like me, are going to come and start becoming so-called journalists. You know what I mean? So how are things different now? How do you keep yourself ahead of everything?
Everything's so different. Sometimes I guess it's funny that you say that because I guess the hater in me sometimes said now everybody wants to be a journalist,
Yeah.
right? Right? Like what happened to going to school for that? Like learning like the rules of journalism and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean that definitely social media has opened a lot of doors, has opened a lot of opportunities, including for myself, right? So I'm not really going to complain that much, but yeah, sometimes I'm like. You can see there's a lot of people that they don't know what they're doing. They just think because of social media they can get into this business and they know the way or they know the field. But trust me, it comes with experience. And I'm really, really happy that that was my degree, that was my career. Because remember, you got to also learn the rules, the laws,
Mhm.
the ethics, because that is something that you just don't learn on the field sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes the things you learn from a professor or the people who have been on the field for a while. So, but yeah, I think social media has changed everything 100%. You know, again, when I was on TV, it was pretty much just TV. Now, when you work for a TV station, man, you got to do videos for the TV station. You got to do, clips for the Instagram page, clips for any platform that they have going on. It's just so different. Something that before maybe you would do just one shoot, you were done and you leave. And now they ask you for like 10 different clips before you can leave the station because you need to get a lot of stuff done. So it's so different than it was back in the days.
And is it common for everybody to do so much? Like I think you watch TV, you think you're just going to pop up there, get the words popping up on the screen, and you're just going to read things. Like, but you make it seem like you have to do the videos, produce the video, do the writing. It seems like you're doing so much from what it looks like. Is that normally how it is?
Yeah, that's not yeah, that's how it is nowadays, and that's why I tell you it's so different because like you just need to produce so many different things for different platforms, like just for everything. Nowadays any TV station or radio station has everything. Like, but that's a good example, radio. Like now I'm doing radio, every Monday night, Thursday nights I do a radio show. So back in the days, you would probably just do the show, sports talk show for 2 hours and you were done. Now you have to produce clips, you have to produce clips of like interviews that you have coming up. You have to do some on camera stuff, even for radio, just so you can promote it, whether it's on their website, their Instagram page, Facebook, everything. So sometimes, like, something that will probably take you 5, 10 minutes before, now it will probably take you an hour, 2 hours just to get everything done.
Yeah,
So it's so different.
you got to do so many different versions and so many different clips, and then even just uploading. And I'm
Yeah.
sure these companies have their own programs where you can probably easily link everything. But it's just so much now, and there's so much, and every day there's a new one popping up and a new thing and things like that. So, but the for someone's trying to start into journalism, what's kind of some advice you'd give them?
You know, it's a beautiful field. I love journalism, man. It's my passion, especially even though a lot of people at the beginning used to, kind of brand me as a sports guy, they probably thought I only knew about sports. One thing I forgot to mention, and we didn't really touch upon it, I was actually the news producer for Univision when I went back my second go around. I used to produce the newscast that had 30-minute newscasts every day. So that opened a lot of doors for me because then people didn't brand me as a sports guy anymore. I was able to do, hardcore news, regular news. Like I was the one sending the reporters out on the field to go cover certain stories. And sometimes I was the one writing the stories for them, or I was writing stories for myself at the station. So that helped me a lot because now that's what I used to do, whether it was like health related stories, hardcore news, different stuff. So people didn't brand me as a sports guy anymore, because they were like, all right, you know what, you can do more than just sports stories. So that helped me a lot. So my advice to somebody who would like definitely love to get into this field, I would say go for it. It's an awesome field. It's a great career, but just know that there's gonna be a lot of barriers. It's gonna be tough, especially at the beginning. It's all about the experience. It's all about meeting people. So make sure you do a lot of networking. Do a lot of networking. And if you try to do TV, you know what? Practice, 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 and always save, those clips, your best clips. Always make sure you save them because you're gonna have to put them all together at one point, so you can send them out to different stations who are hiring. So make sure you do that. So that's one mistake I made. Like I didn't have anything ready when I got laid off from my first job, so I had to put everything all together afterwards. If I had gotten, starting to get prepared, and every time I did a great clip that I like, I should have put it, saved it, record it, edit it, and be like, all right, you know what, this is gonna be for my demo reel. But I didn't. I didn't work on my demo reel until I got laid off from my first job, and then I was running around trying to put it together, at the last minute. Luckily, even though they laid me off from that station, they still allowed me to use the equipment so I could put my
Nice,
demo reel
nice.
together. Imagine that told me, hey, you know what, we're letting you go and you can't come back into the station. Now, a lot of times they do that. They don't let
Yeah,
you go back,
and
but
it,
luckily, huh?
and back then too, probably a lot harder to get video editing equipment than you can now. I mean, right now it's like $21 a month to get Premiere and Audition and everything you need for video editing from Adobe. And back
Actually,
then you could hardly get it. It'd be like $1,000 just to get the program. So
not only that, actually, you know what? One great point I completely forgot about. Nowadays, you have everything in your computer, right?
mhm.
You save all your clips in your computer, so you can just put them together. Back then, it was tapes. So
Oh,
remember, I had to go back to the station, try to remember which tape I did whatever story that I worked on. So I had to, dig out that tape, put it together on the machine, and then try to edit it. So it took me a long time. Luckily, the GM at that time was awesome. He helped me a lot. But I remember going in the evenings for like a week straight, you try to put together the demo reel. So
and
nowadays, I would feel like, you know what, you start putting it together right away. Every time you feel like you have something great, save it and be like, all right, I'm gonna use this for my demo reel as well.
and I recommend all the younger people listening to Google what a tape is so they can understand what you're talking about.
I know,
Like,
right?
but it's funny the whole aspect of being prepared and creating your demo, because that doesn't just transcend journalism. But one of the things I tell people all the time is always have your resume ready. When I get a new job, I take the blurb that they sent me to hire me. I reword it so it's in like the first person for my job for my resume, and then I paste it to my resume because it already has those hit words. It tells me everything, the top words that I need for my position, gives everything that I need to do, and my resume is updated the moment I start this new job. So when I'm ready for the next job, I'm not trying to remember, oh, what did I do? What was my position? Did I do this? Did I do that? It's already there, and you just every time you start learning something new, you go back into your resume, update it. Just always be prepared to have something available for that next position. So.
Very true. That was a great advice for sure.
And so, Omar, you had a pretty good career in journalism and done so much stuff in different sports arenas. Uh, and now you've pivoted yourself into being a media relations manager. What drove you to pivot your career?
Yeah, Raul, I've been lucky and blessed again, to have all this wonderful experience. And growing up, in Boston, I was a big time Boston sports fan. I follow all the local teams, man. That was my, as a kid, your dream to go to every game, and I never would have imagined that one day I was going to grow up to, man, cover World Series for the Red Sox, Super Bowls, NBA Finals in LA when the
And
Celtics were.
and I'm still waiting to be told when you need an assistance for those games because I'm ready to come up here.
Hey, let's do it. I know you're a big sports fan, a Boston sports fan, better
Yeah.
yet. So,
Hmm.
man, we definitely got to do it one day together. Especially now that you're doing your podcast, man. We'll
Yeah.
figure it out. We'll make it happen.
Yeah, for real, bro. Let me know.
It's been a great experience. The only thing I haven't had a chance to cover live, and I'm still hoping, and hopefully it's going to happen in 2026, is the World Cup.
Yep.
That's the only sporting event that I'm dying to do live because I've been able to do everything else except for a soccer World Cup. So I'm hoping that one day I get to do that, and hopefully we'll do it 2026 when the World
Yeah.
Cup in the United States, especially in Gillette Stadium, right? So yeah, but to answer your question, I was a little nervous when I made the transition because again, I was mostly known as a sports guy, even though I had already done, producing newscasts and everything. But still, most of my experience was in sports. And with this position came available at the Department of Public Health, a former colleague of mine who used to be a reporter when I used to work at one of the TV stations, she had my position and she said, Omar, I'm leaving and I think you'll be great for this position. I want to recommend you. And I said, Maria, I'm like, man, I don't know much about health. I don't know much about health. I'm always like health conscious. I always like to work out and things like that. But I was like, I don't know anything else besides that. And she said, Omar, you'll be great. Trust me, you're gonna learn a lot. The main requirement for that position is you need to have a journalism degree. So you have that, she said. And you need to speak Spanish. You have that. She said everything else is going to come with experience little by little. You're going to learn. And there's a lot of experts who work with you who are going to help you learn all this stuff. And man, she was so right. Raul, now, fast forward 11 years, actually last week, 2 weeks ago, I'm sorry, it was my 11th year working at the
Oh,
Department of Public
nice.
Health. And now I'm not going to tell you I'm a health expert, but I feel like I learned a lot about health, especially in the last few years, with COVID and everything. So it was probably the best thing I did because I feel like I have best of both worlds right now. I still get to do sports, which is my passion, and I do a job that I feel like, man, we're doing something for the community. Because what we do is we put in all this information out there so the community know what's going on in Massachusetts when it comes to anything health related. For the last 3 years, again, talking about COVID, people counted on us a lot to know what was going on. Whether it was the vaccine, the number of cases and everything. So that was the information we were putting out there. So I felt like at least we were doing something really, really positive, helping out a lot of the people in the community. So that's why I feel like I have best of both worlds. And man, I've been lucky and blessed to be able to do both.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier on that there's limited amount of available positions in any type of journalism job. Not everybody's going to be the lead anchor. Not everybody's going to be the lead sportscaster. It's just not available, and that's not going to happen. It's like with anything. Not everybody's going to make it to the NBA or the NFL, and sometimes you do have to pivot to something different. So what are some other type of positions where people or fields that people who do want to do journalism and love the idea of journalism can pivot to other careers?
That's a great point again, because that happened to me when I got laid off. Like I mentioned to you earlier, I got laid off at one point when I didn't have my demo reel ready, right? So, and I was early in my career, man. And I was probably like mid to late 20s, and I feel like the world was ending. You go, well, what am I gonna do with my career now? Even though you like, you know, we unfortunately a lot of us go through this in our careers, right? And that was my first time. And later on in life, I went through it again. But at that point, I was like, what am I gonna do now? I had like the perfect job doing what I love, blah, blah, blah. But then you realize there's so many other things out there. Sometimes you just have to have patience and again have some contacts or connections, right? So some of the things that I started doing right away, I said, all right, well, I'm doing TV right now. That's not working. So maybe I can do radio. Luckily, I have friends who work in radio and they hire me. They couldn't hire me full time, but at least I was freelancing. So, that kept me busy. I was doing some radio as a freelance. I was writing for a local newspaper. I was freelancing. At least, I had some type of income coming in. But then I started thinking, you know what? Other things that I always loved to do since I love sports, man, I could see myself working for a professional sports team. And then, trust me, Raul, now that I've been doing PR, I still feel like that could be one of my future jobs. I would love to work for a professional team because now I have the experience not only as a journalist, but I have the experience of doing public relations. And that's what I would love to do one day, maybe work for, the New England Patriots, the Boston Red Sox, doing public relations. And having my experience will help me so much when it comes to dealing with the media as a PR person, right? Because I
Mhm.
know both sides of the field. I know what a reporter needs. So when a reporter will reach out to me, which is what people do at the Department of Public Health, when reporters reach out to me, I know they're on deadlines. I know they have a lot of work to do and they need information, whether it's data, interviews, whatever. So having all that experience, I always look back and I'm like, man, one of the things that I always wanted to do was work for a professional sports team. And I feel like now that I have both experiences, I could do that. And, I would feel even more comfortable knowing that all that experience behind me is going to help me. So those are some of the things that I feel like people who can get into specific fields that they're looking at, they can look at this other field like, what? Work in the communications department at some sports team, working that's for me because I love sports. So maybe some people might not really love sports, but there's a lot of other, a lot of companies have a PR department,
Yep.
communications department. So there's a lot of things. And if you're a great writer, that comes in handy. And that's what some of the main requirements working for some of these companies. So those are a lot of the things that people can do.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to understand that in these field you're going to be wearing many hats,
Hmm.
and it feels sometimes burdensome. I think in any company, any job, when you work so many apps, it feels burdensome. But you also have to realize that's experience in a lot of different things, and you can kind of take each one of those points and branch off into something bigger and better to or different, that they're what you're expecting, but still kind of in the same range of what you wanted. So you have to kind of be open to that. And you obviously mentioned networking, which I think for a lot of people is scary. I'm not the best at networking. I'm a very social person, me. I'm a very social person, and I'm very good at that stuff. But when I go to these networking events, I just feel so out of place because it's very different for me. It was different in college when I'm surrounded by people I know and people I'm around, or I'm surrounded solely. I warm up to people, and nobody's going to tell you Raul is shy. Raul is quiet. Those are words that don't roll for my name. But when I go to these networking events, I could probably go the whole day and barely talk to like two or three people. You know what I mean? So how do people overcome those type of things?
Yeah, it's way different, like being social and being able to network, right? Because it's like completely different. And it is really hard. And it's like, a lot of people have fear of that, like going to networking events, because I've gone to a lot of those events and I see people like that. And that used to probably be me, even though I always felt like I got along with people. But again, it's completely different than when you're hanging out with somebody at a get together, at a party, right? So, but my best advice is when you go to these events, just be yourself. Just be yourself. Introduce yourself, right? Hey, Raul Lopez, how you doing? I'm Omar Cabrera. I'm here. I came to this job fair, because I'm looking for a job. I'm not even looking for a job, but I just want to see there are opportunities out there, right? I
Mhm.
just wanted to come to your booth just to see what you have going on in here, and if you had a business card, I would love to get it, because I would like to keep in touch. Just be yourself, because sometimes when you try to pretend someone you're not, people can read past through you, right? They would know that, all right, he's like, that's not the type of person he is. But if you're yourself, I feel like that's the key. People will like you the way you are. So, yes, you know, just be professional, introduce yourself, and just be yourself.
Yeah, and it's just funny because it's probably one of the hardest things to get sometimes when you're at these places. You feel so intimidated, and you're like, and you start becoming yourself, and you just kind of start opening up. And like I think Peter, I was talking to Peter and interviewing him, and one of the things he talked about, because he does diversity, inclusion, and equality, and inclusion, and he was mentioning how sometimes it's just a matter of, "Hi, I'm Raul, what do you like to do? Oh, I like to do something similar." And just finding those little tiny things to to break that ice, to get you, to get you talking. It's just funny story that just happened this week. My daughter's coach. So my daughter got into a travel league for soccer. So the two coaches from that team, their daughters get into it too. And so I've been kind of hanging out with some of the coaches, and we went to the practice together. And I was talking to my daughter's coach from the other team, and we were talking, and two very different lifestyles, very different. He's a teacher, he's a gym teacher, from Connecticut, and we started talking. And we found out we both were really into R&B back in like the '90s, and we started talking about R&B. Now he's sending me texts about, oh, do you remember Silk? Do you remember Shy? Do you remember? So it's just sometimes it's just finding the little things that get you, to get you in a door. But these are things that you learn with time. These are things that you will experience, and everything will come through, and you'll remember these, and you'll know this now. If there was something you go back in time and say, Omar, focus on this, look at this. What's kind of some of the things you kind of wish you knew early on?
Man, actually, it's really great, because, yeah, and when you look back, you're like, man, I wish I knew how to do this better. Or I wish I had done this, right? Um, I would definitely, since I knew that I wanted to do something in communications and stuff, I wish I had probably focused more. I remember in high school, they had some classes, well, not in my high school, but outside high school programs that you could do, kind of go work on your craft. And I remember they used to actually offer journalism courses, for high school kids. And I wish I'd taken those, just because I feel like that would have prepared me more. Maybe what took me a couple of years, as a professional, will have probably taken me less than that, to feel more comfortable in front of the camera, to feel more comfortable doing interviews, my writing, things like that. So I wish I had focused more on that earlier. But you know what? At that age, you're a kid, so you don't really think about these things, right?
Yep.
But that would be my advice for some kid, that I would be like, hey, listen, I know you like communications, and you're talking about you want to be a journalist one day. Maybe you should start doing that right now. And I had that experience as well. they paired me up with I did a big brother little brother program, right? And they paired me up with somebody who had like the same interest as you. And there was this kid who became like my little brother. We are up to this day, we're like really close. And that's the advice I told him. Look, if this is what you really want to do, or you think you want to do, you should start taking it seriously right now. And he always thanks me about that because he said, hey, you know what? I remember you used to tell me that. And I wish I had somebody telling me those things when I was young, you know? So that's something I would have done different.
And you talked also about wishing you had somebody to talk about yourself earlier, and you had a mentor. And I
Hmm.
think for some people, people don't know what a mentor is, or even how to find a mentor. What's some advice you'd give someone when it comes to being able to identify a mentor?
Yeah, you know what? So, again, going back to that experience that I used to tell you about, Big Brother, Little Brother program that I did. Um, there's a lot of programs like that where they have, whether it's for minority students or any type of students, uh, they try to pair you up sometimes with a professional who has the same interest as you as a kid, right? If you're a kid and you tell them, "Oh, look, I want to be a doctor," there are a lot of doctors who are doing that program, and they will pair that kid with a doctor. That way, you know what? Maybe once in a while, that doctor will take him to his office, to the hospital, whatever he works. That way, that kid from an early age, he can start kind of being around that surrounding, around that experience. And then he'll probably be like, man, maybe this is not for me. Or he'll be like, oh man, I definitely want to be a doctor. So they have a lot of programs like that. And that's exactly that program that I did. The guy reached out to me. He said, hey, Omar, I know you said you always wanted to be involved in a program like this. Look, we have a kid who wants to go to school. He said he wants to go to school and study journalism because he likes to be a sportscaster. We want to pair him up with you. Will you be able to do it? I was like, yeah, I'm happy to do so because I wish somebody had done something for me like that when I was younger. So there's a lot of programs like that. Sometimes you just have to kind of, go to you. If you're a kid, go to your school, find out about those programs. And nowadays everything's online too. So it's probably easier just to find it online,
Yeah,
mentoring programs.
yeah, and it's definitely, I think, the wonderful aspect of having information everywhere. It's maybe a little easier for us to find a program that can guide you to someone who can help you be a mentor, to move things forward. So, and you talked about becoming a PR person for a sports thing in the World Cup. You know what I mean? And I think one of the things for us is we always feel we need to keep going more. Our success isn't completed until we get that next step. What do you feel is your next step?
Wow. That's a tough question. Now, you know what? The next step is I definitely would like to work for maybe a sports team one day. But a lot of people ask me, "Will you want to go back to TV full time?" For a long time I thought about it, but again, what I told you earlier, I feel like I have best of both worlds right now because nowadays when you work for a TV station, especially a big TV station, you have to sign a contract. And once you sign that contract, you're only exclusive with that station, and it works great for a lot of people. But for somebody like me who likes to do different things, that wouldn't work for me anymore because now I wouldn't be able to do like the Patriots when they hire me to do the play by play or Revolution hired me to go do the PA announcing. I probably wouldn't be able to do that. Or if I want to do sports talk radio like I'm doing now every week, I wouldn't be able to do that. So you know what? So maybe working for something like that wouldn't work for me. So it will have to be something like, man, now that I have that PR experience, I would love to maybe work for like one of my childhood teams, like the Red Sox, the Patriots. So maybe one day, maybe one day. I was just waiting for a certain period at my job. I wanted to reach to that milestone, which were 10 years. And
Mhm.
now I'm finally at 11 years. So now I'm like, maybe, I can start thinking ahead and see what's next for me.
Nice, nice.
So yeah.
Well, Omar, I really thank you for being here today. I wish you a lot of luck. It's amazing the amount of stuff you do. The working like an immigrant. I think it's just pure hard work all the way through, and your success has showed that. So thank you very much for being here with us today. So,
Nah, Raul, man, thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me be one of your first guests. And let me tell you, man, you're doing a great job. And I hope you have me back again later on in the future after you've done many episodes. You'll be like, hey, let's run it again. I'll be more than happy to be here with you, man.
Definitely, definitely, and I'll definitely look forward to being called over for some of these Patriots games when you need an assistant. So,
With the World Cup.
yeah, the World Cup too. Yeah, definitely. But to everyone else, thank you for joining us and listening in, and I hope you'll join me again next time as we continue to learn how to say success in Spanglish.